If you're a plant person, you've definitely heard this one. It's one of those bits of advice that gets passed around with total confidence. But is there any truth to it? Let's dig in. Yep, there it is, the classic line. You've heard it, I've heard it, we've all heard it, probably while looking at a beautiful snake plant or maybe a spider plant. It sounds so simple, so authoritative. It makes you think the plant is just happier, all tucked in and secure. I mean, let's think about it. Is it possible that a living thing whose entire purpose in life is to grow and seek out more resources actually enjoys being stuck in a tiny box? We're going to get to the bottom of this and look at the real science behind this super persistent plant myth. Okay, so to really unpack this, we first have to get on the same page. We need to be crystal clear about the words we're using because the language here really, really matters. This right here is the critical difference. On the left, you've got well-rooted. That's our goal. A beautiful, healthy balance of soil and roots working together. The plant is stable. On the right, you have root-bound. This is a problem. The roots have literally run out of real estate and have started to displace all the soil. The myth suggests plants actually prefer this state on the right. So why on earth does this advice seem to work sometimes? Why is it that you take one of these supposedly happy root-bound plants, you put it in a big, spacious new home, and it just declines? What is going on? Well, the answer is probably not what you think it is. First things first, we have to stop thinking our plants have feelings about their pot size. They are not feeling cozy or secure. What's really at play here is a fascinating mix of basic soil physics and some pretty cool biological survival instincts. And this is the absolute key to the entire mystery. It's not about the roots physically touching the plastic sides of the pot. It is all about how quickly the soil inside that pot can dry out. This drying cycle, that's the secret. This sponge analogy explains it perfectly. Think about a pot that's way too big. The soil acts like a giant waterlogged sponge that just stays wet forever. All that stagnant water pushes out the oxygen, and the roots literally suffocate. Hello, root rot. But a tight pot, that's like a small sponge. It has way less soil, so it dries out super fast. And here's the cool part, that drying process actively pulls fresh oxygen down into the root zone. It's a lifesaver. So that's the first half of the answer, right there. When someone says a plant likes being root-bound, what they're really saying is that the plant is super sensitive to root rot, and keeping it in a small pot makes it much, much harder for us to accidentally kill it with kindness and too much water. Okay, but what about the flowers? That's the second reason this myth hangs around. See, when a plant is in a huge pot with all the room in the world, it's in what you could call a luxury phase. Its only goal is to grow bigger, more leaves, more roots, claim more territory. But the second its roots hit the wall of the pot, it switches into survival phase. Its internal logic flips a switch that says, uh-oh, territory is maxed out, I need to reproduce, now. And all that energy gets redirected from making leaves to making flowers or little baby plants. We're basically using a tiny bit of stress to trigger a bloom. Right, so this obviously doesn't apply to every single plant out there. So let's look at the usual suspects, the specific types of plants that are always getting this label, and see why they are just built to handle these kinds of conditions. The main culprits usually fall into one of these three camps. You've got your arid dwellers, like snake plants and ZZ plants. They have these thick, fleshy roots that are built to store water, and their absolute worst enemy is sitting in soggy soil. So a tight pot is their friend. Then you have epiphytes. Hoyas, orchids, these guys literally grow on trees in nature with their roots crammed into tight little crevices in the bark, exposed to tons of air. And of course, the classic spider plant, which, as you know, almost never makes those famous little pups until it starts to feel a little crowded. But, and this is a huge but, this beneficial, cozy state does not last forever. It's a temporary phase. Over time, that helpful tightness will absolutely cross the line and start to become actively bad for the plant. You have to know when to step in. The very same conditions that were protecting your plant can turn around and start to strangle it. So what are the warning signs? Okay, watch for these three things. Number one, the soil becomes hydrophobic. That means there are so many roots, the soil can't hold water anymore. You pour water in and it just runs straight down the sides and out the bottom. Number two, and this is the most dangerous, is girdling. The roots circle and circle until they start to thicken and literally strangle each other, cutting off the flow of nutrients. And finally, nutrient exhaustion. There's just not enough soil left to hold on to any fertilizer, so the plant is essentially starving to death. When you start seeing those signs, it's time to take action. But if you repot the wrong way, you can cause that exact shock we were trying to avoid in the first place. So, what's the right way to do it? Remember this number, 2 inches. This is the golden rule of repotting. When you move up to a new pot, you only increase the diameter by 1 to 2 inches. That's it. Go any bigger, and you're right back to that giant sponge problem that leads to root rot. So once you've picked your slightly bigger pot, you can't just drop that tangled mess of roots in there. You have to deal with those circling roots. Get in there with your hands and massage them, tease them apart. And look, if it's a solid brick of roots, do not be afraid to take a clean knife and just score the outside. This actually encourages new roots to grow outwards, into that fresh new soil, instead of just continuing to circle and choke themselves out. Which brings us all the way back around to where we started. After talking about water physics and plant biology, what's the final verdict on our original question? And the answer is a clear, resounding no. No plant likes having its growth restricted. What they do like, what they prefer, are the beneficial conditions that a tight pot accidentally creates for them. And that is a soil that drains quickly, dries out fast, and allows tons of fresh oxygen to get to their roots. So if you take only one thing away today, let it be this. The myth exists because it's a useful defense against our most common plant parenting mistake, overwatering. You can always fix a plant that's a little too tight, but you can almost never save a plant that has rotted from sitting in a soggy, oversized pot. So it's not that they like it, it's just that it protects them from